Welcome to the Sport of Kings podcast, episode 344, which is also the second episode of the 2.0 reboot of the podcast, where the horse player is king. I'm going to continue to experiment with the format over the next few months and welcome your feedback on Twitter/X. My handle is @Derby1592. That's @Derby1592. This week, I'm joined by a special guest, professional player Duke Matties. We'll focus on finding and exploiting value on the Saturday card from Gulfstream Park. We'll talk about some of our strongest handicapping opinions and how we might leverage those opinions using optimal betting strategies. Hello, Duke. It's been a while since you were on the show. How's 2026 treating you?
So far, so good. Got to get rid of this rain we've had out here in California, but everything's been pretty good so far. I haven't had too many race days at Santa Anita, which kind of hurts, but can't wait till we get this back to the sunshine out here, and then we'll be ready to roll.
Well, they say it never rains in Southern California, and also when it rains, it pours. So I guess both of those are, one of them is more true than the others, I think.
It did pour, that's for sure.
Well, I live in Washington, and we've had a pretty wet winter so far, too. Not quite as bad as you, but we had our fair share of flooding and stuff as well. So I can relate.
Yeah.
So you've got a new gig going. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I thought I'd give you a chance to tell the listeners what you're doing. I think it's centered around Santa Anita racing. So maybe tell us a little bit more about that and how they might tap into that if they're interested.
So it's dukespicks.com is my new site, DUKESPICKS. It's been up and running about 2 months. I started it with the Breeders' Cup. What I do, what I like to do for like a big race day is I have this like live stream. So I actually talk about all the races at, like I did the Breeders' Cup and I did opening day Santa Anita. I talked about all the races. I gave some strategies. I gave some track trends, whatever track it was, bias wise or just post positions, things like that. The site goes way more in depth. I do a little bit of teaching on there. I do give away picks, but I give away the picks in a way where I want people to kind of understand how I'm looking at these races, and I want them to learn, what I know, and so it's more of a learning, and then they take that into their own account, and then they play the races on their own. But I'm on there almost every day, at least always on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because as you know, those are the bigger race days. So it's doing pretty well. The site is I think we have lots of members, but I have a VIP membership. So that's where you get to interact with me, and basically you can ask me almost anything you want on there. It's very interactive. It's been really good. We all got off to a good start, and with Breeders' Cup and with opening day Santa Anita, I gave out some really good horses that day, and it's going pretty well. So if anybody wants to check it out, I have a featured track of the month if they don't want to follow like all the tracks that I do. Sometimes I'll put up 2 or 3 tracks a day. I put up Tampa and Santa Anita today. So what the featured track is Santa Anita for the month of January.
Well, great, because everything you talked about is sort of what we try to do on this podcast, so people will get a kind of a taste of that. And if they want more, they go to, what was it again, Duke's Picks?
Dukespicks.com, yeah, DUKESPICKS, dukespicks.com.
So, what I would like to do maybe to start is just tell us, you talked about you have featured tracks, but you look at lots of tracks. So kind of what's your approach? So what's your strategy? How do you figure out, which races you're actually going to spend some time on? And then once you've done that analysis, how do you decide whether or not you're actually going to bet? And then once you've figured out this is worth betting, there's some value, you got kind of how do structure your, specific pools you're going to go after and how you're going to attack those.
So that's exactly what I did in the first lesson that I put on here. I haven't gotten into more of those, but I did a lesson on basically you how you get to that point, right? So you I look at a lot of races. Number one, I look at a lot of races and I try to narrow down those races to at least half of the horses or maybe even less. And if I can't do that, I kind of go on to the next one. If I don't see any value in it, again, I go on to the next one. I what I teach on here a lot is about skipping races. I know it's not good for handle, but it's good for your pocket, So a lot of people think they always got to, keep betting and keep betting, keep betting. No, you got to bet more on the ones that you have the opinion on. So for me, I look at least 3 or 4 cards a day. Pick out the races that I think there's something there, whether it be, a good pace scenario or a good trainer change or, there's lots of things that I'm looking for. Maybe a horse that was against the bias. Uh, Maybe a horse is just at the right distance and the right surface, that I think he's best at. There's a lot of things that I take into consideration. But like you said, it's looking for that value. So you have to pick races that start with at least 8 horses in it. These 6-horse fields, you almost can't get any value in that kind of race. So I'm looking for at least 8 horses, looking for a race where there's something that sticks out, to me. And then what I do is I put the horses that I think, are the contenders, basically the ones I think are the contenders, not based on odds, just based on what I think. So it's a process. It's probably something you do a lot yourself. I think all the good handicappers do some form of that because you have to, in this game, there's so few opportunities anymore. You have to be very selective, and that's my main teaching point on the site.
So sometimes the best decision is to not bet a race. That's what
I
you're
think
saying.
so. I do think so. Like, I think there's a lot of times, where you'll like a horse and you'll think he's going to be 6-1 and he'll be, 8-5, and why take that 8-5? I wait for the next one. There's always going to be another bet out there somewhere. So I'm trying to teach people that's their goal, is to find a really good play and then play that, and then play. I also talk a lot about bankroll management on the site, and that gets more in depth. And then I talk about ticket structure, and that gets even more in depth. So those things they're very difficult. I struggle with them every day. Structuring tickets is not easy. Managing your money is not easy. You have to be very disciplined, I think, in horse racing. So that's kind of, where we go with this.
Yeah, I love everything you're saying. People are going to have to put up with me talking about this book that I've just written and I hope to get out published here in a few months. But all the things you mentioned, you talked about having a process, and you talked about passing races and managing your bankroll and structuring your tickets. All those are things I go into in the book. They're all the kinds of things that get glossed over. Everybody talks about handicapping and picks, but if you really want to become a good horse player, you have to do well at all those things. So I love what you're doing and how you're talking about it. Couldn't agree more. And we'll go into some specifics, but I got a couple of follow-on questions on what you said about your process. Um, are there a limited number of tracks you look at? I mean, or are you looking at any bunch of tracks and just I mean, I'm just curious how many tracks you might start glancing through in a given day, even say on a Saturday when they're all running.
That's the trouble with Saturday. On a Thursday and a Friday, I can get through 4 or 5 of them with no problem. Getting more than that done is it's a little bit too much to do. Like on a Saturday, I would like to get into 6 or 7, but I mean, it's too hard to handle. But I always start with New York this time of year, not as much, but I always start with New York. Um, Florida, obviously, Gulfstream and Tampa. Um, Santa Anita is my number, one track, and
Well, that's your home track, right?
yeah, it's my home track, my number one track. So that's always going to be there. And then I try to dabble with fairgrounds and a little bit of Oaklawn. So that would be as far as I would probably go this time of year.
Well, that's pretty much all the major tracks running right now, right?
Yeah,
You try to
that
touch on
Turfway.
all of them. Yeah. Oh, except Turfway. That's right.
Yeah, Turfway's too tough.
Yeah, Turfway is its own beast, but I've grown to become very fond of Turfway in terms of, for me, it's one of the better products out there. But it is a little quirky because it's at night, and it's on synth, so there's things people might not like about it. But so that's interesting. So you may even stretch beyond 3 or 4 tracks, but and then as you're sorting through them, it sounds like you skip right over the small field size unless there's some horse that you've been planning to bet or something maybe, but it sounds like you're looking for horses at least 8, a field size of at least 8, and then maybe something in that race, some horse or pace scenario or something that gets you interested, and then you're going to dig deeper and see if there's any value. Is that kind of the approach?
Yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, the only way you can play those shorter fields is in pick fives. If you like something in the pick five sequence or a pick four sequence, and you got to deal with the short fields, right? So that's the only time I kind of even pay any attention to them. I'm not a synthetic guy, so Gulfstream this time of year kind of I kind of like only have to look at half their races, so that helps. That way I don't have to go through a 10, 11 race card there. I can only look at 4 or 5 of them because I'll bet the turf and the dirt. Um, but that's the approach. That's my idea. I gotta, I mean, you're looking at 40 or 50 races. You can definitely find a couple of them that something sticks out. So that's what we do.
So the last question I'll ask before we kind of get more into the races we're going to talk about here. Um, you mentioned, some of the picks. Are you more of a vertical player, cherry picking the races, or are you more looking for a sequence that you play, or is it some of both? I'm just curious, what's your lean there?
I've done both on the site, but most of the time I do more of like let's say a pick five sequence. I'll pick one race that I'll say this is my best bet in the pick five, and then I'll give opinions on the other 5 races. So generally, it revolves around pick fives. But I always seem to come up with one that I like the most. Today's didn't win. It was at Santa Anita. I think he ran third. But I mean, it's it's got to be some kind of format, right? I have to have some way to tell the people which races to play and that stuff. So, and a pick five is a good way to go. Um, for that, you don't have to play the pick five, obviously, but that's what I usually kind of give out.
Yeah, again, I can relate. We used to kind of pick a pick five just because it was an easy way to, you'd get the biggest card of the day and play, talk about that pick five. But I just I'm kind of getting away from that on the show now because I don't want to encourage people to always be playing the pick five. I think it gets overbet. A lot of players are playing it when it's probably not the optimal,
Yeah.
pool to be in. They're probably better off in a lot more simple approach and focusing in on races that they really like you said. So that's kind of what we'll do today. We're not going to talk about like a pick five sequence unless you want to.
No, that's
Um,
okay. And that is so true because what I do teach to people on here is to simplify. So what I do is I say, well, play the doubles. Play doubles, or maybe go to a pick three if you think that next race is okay too. So I do like picking winners more than exactas. That's the one thing I think I'm better at. So I think if I give you a couple horses, I can come up with a winner. So that's why doubles and pick threes is what I kind of promote. I think the people like it. I've had a lot of good feedback on people. Oh, I hit the double there, and in the middle of that pick five, I hit that pick three. That thanks for that. There's been a lot of good, you know, things that I'm trying to show people that it's you don't have to, like you said, you don't have to play a pick five, and it's difficult to hit a pick five. So, and it costs you a lot more money. So You got to be
And
careful.
you typically have to play some races you don't particularly like, right? It's
Correct.
very
Yep.
seldom are you going to find a pick five where you like all five races,
Yeah,
right?
you can't like them all.
Okay, great. So, one last thing before we get into the races, I will always want to go over the betting menu for the track we're talking about. In this case, it's Gulfstream Park. It's kind of average in terms of takeout for most of the pools. It does have an all turf pick three. That's $3 minimum, 15% takeout. That's probably their most player friendly bet. That's a pretty good takeout for a pick three. A lot of times pick threes are 23, 24%. The higher minimum, lower takeout, that tends to chase the CAWs away a little bit. Um, I'll give Jim Goodman at Keeneland credit for coming up with this bet first. Some of the other tracks have been following suit, and I think it's good. Like you said, a pick three is not nearly as hard to hit as a pick five. It's more likely you might like all three races, or at least two of the three in a pick three, which I think is not a bad way to go. If you want to go into the more exotic bets, it's probably a better way to do it. Um, they also supposedly keep the CAWs out of their middle pick five. Um, the early and late they run wild, but supposedly they don't allow them to play the middle pick five. So if you are a pick five player, probably you want to play the middle pick five at Gulfstream. They also have jointly with Santa Anita, and I'm sure you're aware of this. You probably play this, Duke. Is the Santa Anita Gulfstream Park combined races for their coast to coast pick five and Sunset pick six. They again supposedly keep CWs out of those. The Sunset Pick Six is the last three races on each card. That's easy to remember. The Coast to Coast Pick Five, they change it every day, so you have to look on Santa Anita or Gulfstream's website to get the races for that. Stay away from the Rainbow Jackpot Pick Six, probably one of the worst bets on the planet for retail players, even on the mandatory payout days. I would stay away from that. And that was kind of invented at Gulfstream Park for the CAWs, and they love it. And they kind of run wild, I'd say, in general at Gulfstream in the pools that aren't restricting them. So keep that in mind when they play. But anything about the betting menu you want to highlight or mention, Duke?
No, I think you covered it really well. I agree with almost everything you said. Stay away from that rainbow and get in the, if you can afford it, get in that, get in that pick five. That's split between the two tracks. That's a tremendous wager. The $3 pick three is obviously tremendous. So I agree with almost everything you said.
All right, well, great. So let's get started. We're going to just look at a few races and kind of pick your brain on what your opinion is and how you might attack it. So we're not doing any synth races. You'll be happy to hear that, Duke. I asked you ahead of time, so now I don't understand why you're not a big Turfway Park fan. Um, but we're going to start with race six. It's a mile and 16th on the turf, the starter allowance. Um, and I'll just take it over to you first. What do you think about? Let's see, the favorite in here is Nantasket Beach, 5-2. Do you think he will be favored? And how would you rate him? Is he a favorite you're going to lean on, or you're going to try to beat? What's your opinion on this race?
Um, Nantasket Beach, he has a good record at Gulfstream on the grass, but he has a tough post position. He's the 9 post. And he's kind of like one of those horses that's, going to be up close. I don't usually like that type of running style on the turf at Gulfstream because they usually get hung, 3 wide at least. And Gulfstream's a track on the turf where saving ground is enormous. So I'm kind of going to go away from him. The
Well,
7 horse St. Armand's Key is making a huge drop in class and has very good tactical speed, maybe on the lead. I think that's a must use. He's off time. He hasn't run since July, but I think that doesn't. It's really not a problem for Mike Maker. He's good off these layoffs. So he's a definite use. The price horse that I'm going to use in here is the 5 Irwin. The trainer is doing tremendously at Gulfstream this year, and I had a trip on that horse when he had the 10 hole at Aqueduct going a mile and 3/8. Really bad trip that day. Got shuffled, and I think this horse might be the one to hopefully save ground and come running late. I think 10-1 would be a tremendous price for that kind of horse. The others in there, I think you got to respect Irod jumping on the 2 Hot Blooded. Um, just just the fact that he's gonna, get on a horse like this. I think he had no pace to run at 2 back, and then ran on the poly last time and ran a good third. So has some good back races too. So that was kind of leaning on those three. The 5 is the good value. The 7 is probably the most likely winner, in the 2 just because of the rod factor and the back class.
The rod factor. I call it the rod tax at Gulfstream.
Yeah, you get. Unfortunately, you don't get good odds on that. But
Yeah, I don't like that horse because every time I see his name, I get that song playing in my head. Hot blooded. It's just I wasn't a big Foreigner fan, but I can't read that name without hearing that song. So so I kind of share your thoughts of most everything on Nantasket Beach. I agree with you that outside post probably one of the um, horses to play for me are turf races where you have a horse that has tactical speed, not a kind of horse you can send and get the lead with, but a horse that wants to be forward, but probably isn't going to get the lead on an outside post on the turf. It's almost a prescription to be hung wide on that first turn every time. So I totally agree with your assessment on that one. That doesn't mean he will be. Sometimes you luck into a trip, but Johnny Velasquez is not the best rider on the planet for saving ground on the turf to begin with. So I have a feeling, that horse is going to have to be much the best to win, probably. So I agree with you. I'm willing to take a shot against him. And the horse I was gravitating towards is exactly the same one as you, not your most likely winner, but your value horse, Irwin, the 5. The Barnes Pot. This has been a really ouchy horse, but he came back off a layoff and ran really well. And they tried to wheel him back like a week later. They got a vet scratch, which is not necessarily a good sign with an ouchy horse like him. But the good news is, 9 days after that, they worked him, and he's got another work a week before this race. So he's had a couple works. So it doesn't seem like, and they're bringing him back, which, they've been laying this horse off a lot. So if he was ready to get laid off, he probably wouldn't be in here. But he's the kind of horse that might, run up the track and not run again for another 6 months. But I think he might be sitting on, as good a race as he can run as a 7-year-old, second off the layoff. So I'm with you. And he's in good form off that last race. And 10-1, I don't know because the barn is hot. Maybe he'll get bet down a little below. He's coming off a win, but I'm willing to take a little bit less than that. I probably even 6-1 would be okay with me on him. I'm hoping it'll be higher than that. And his rider, David Egan, is not bad turf rider at all. So I'm with you there. So how would you tackle this race, given that you got sort of a value horse, a couple mid-price contenders, and you got the value horse 5 Irwin, you got the St. Armand's Key. You said probably your most likely winner. He's 5-1 in the morning line. Hot blooded 6-1, but with Irad, I wonder if you'll get 6-1 on that one. And with Foreigner fans out there. So how would you tackle this race?
It's tough to determine before you see what the true odds are going to be, because I think you're right. I think Saint Armand's Key will be more like 7-2. I think Irwin will be more like 6-7-1, and Hot Blooded will be in that range of 4 or 5-1. I would probably play if the 5 goes off better than 6-1. I'd probably play him to win. I'd play an exacta box for sure with the 7. Maybe some exactas 5-7 with 2-5-7, something along those lines. And I might even throw in the 1 because I like the 1 post on the turf at Gulfstream. I might throw him in underneath. So if I was playing tries, maybe I'll go 5-7 with 1-2-5-7. So I'm just trying to fade the 9 at 5-2, and like for all the reasons you said, Johnny V, he's not tucking in. I don't think he's sitting 3 wide. And I think the reason Irwin scratched last time, because I think Tappan Street was in that race. I don't think
that was that race.
I think that was that race where Tappan Street came back. So I think they only scratched just to avoid him.
Oh, great. Yeah, I was going to say, it didn't look like it was any kind of a deal because, they worked him shortly thereafter and they had a couple works in. So it sounds like even though you're not a huge fan of the verticals, if you can find a vulnerable favorite and a couple horses you like, you'll go into the exactas and tries, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, for sure. No doubt about it. I mean, if this race, like if I like the race before it or after it, which I probably won't, because I think they're both on synthetic. Um, that kind of ruins the idea of playing a double or a pick three around this race. But that's why Gulfstream becomes more of a vertical wager place for me because I try to avoid those poly races.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I have a couple other horses I thought were price horses that were worth considering. I'm just curious to get your opinion on those.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, One of those was Spy Novel, who's coming off two pretty good races on the synth, but he's run well on the turf in the past. Uh, he does have the outside post, um, but he does have maybe more positional speed than Nantasket Beach, and it seems like they could either send him or at least just follow Saint Armand's Key and maybe not lose too much ground. I'm just curious at a big price, is that one you would consider, or is there something you didn't like about that horse?
It might be getting slightly, he might be slightly on the improve. I just thought he's probably not going to clear St. Armand's Key and that chasing on the turf. Like he's going to be probably too wide and Nantasket Beach three wide. I mean, so if the pace was really slow, he might benefit, if he was stalking and they went really, really slow and they lined up 7-8. So, I mean, maybe in that case. Um, I just think he might be a little bit slower on speed figures. We have him in the high 70s, where I think this race is going to be won by somebody at least in the mid 80s.
So you think he needs to run a little better than he typically does. He's probably not going to get the kind of setup that's going to lead to that. So even though he's a price, you're not too interested in that one, it sounds like.
Not too much.
So the only other one I was considering was the horse shipping in from Woodbine, switches to Martin Drexler, has run well on turf and synth, kind of fits in here. Um, I just curious what you thought of that horse, the six horse.
That horse probably has more of a chance. He's probably he's probably run. I mean, run a two other than at Woodbine. It's got to be a pretty salty race, I would think. Well, Jayhawk won that race two back, so he lost to Jayhawk. I mean, that day. So I don't know. He probably can. I think he can probably hit the trifecta. But that's
I was thinking.
interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking he's more of he'll be finishing kind of type horse
Yeah.
than a winner type. I was just thinking more in the exactas and tries kind of thing.
Yep.
All right. So anything else on that race? We'll move on to another race. Unless you have anything else you want to add.
No, that's good for that one, I believe.
All right. Let's go to another one. We're going to skip over some small fields and synth races. We're going to go to the next turf race on the card. This is quite a bit different, though. This one's 5 furlongs on the turf. It's a $62,000 allowance optional claimer for older horses. The favorite in here is a kind of tepid 6-horse lay Amazonia. Do you think he's going to be favored? And is that a horse that interests you one way or either way, as being a strong favorite or a weak favorite?
This is an extremely difficult 5 furlong turf race. I mean, got horses coming from all over, and it's just, I mean, it's going to be one of those races, I think, where the trip is going to matter, right? It's going to be, there's plenty of speed. The horses like the 8 Vindicate Cha-Cha's got very quick speed. On the payroll, right to his outside's got a lot of speed. And the 3 Trumpets have speed at times, and he's pretty quick. So even the 1 Hot Cargo is not going to be too far behind. So I was kind of looking for a horse to come from off the pace here. And I chose off a replay I watched. I chose the 4 Greenfield Cougar. That race 2 back, a horse checked in front of him, and he got shuffled back, and he still came on and won that race. I thought that was pretty impressive. Now, I don't like that he didn't run great on the synthetic after that, because it seems like the horse loves synthetic, so that worried me just a little bit. But I thought pace wise, that horse could get a very, very good setup here. And he's got far enough inside, being in a 4 hole, and he's got speed right to his inside. So he might fall into that, that inside out Gulfstream trip that you like to get on the turf down there sprinting. So I landed on him.
Wait, so just
Or her.
on him. So he's 4-1, or is it her? Is it
I
her?
landed on her.
It's
Yeah,
her, yeah. Is
it's
she?
a filly
She's
race.
4-1. Would that be a price you consider to be playable, or do you need more than that, or
I
what?
wouldn't
What?
want much less than that, I mean, because she's going to have to get a trip to win, I think. And 4-1, that's close to fair, I think. I wouldn't go much less. If she were favored, I probably wouldn't play her. To be one of these races, I might have to pass. But again, you can find other horses in here. I think that there's lots of horses that have a chance in here. So the 7 Ms. Big Bucks, I think she's another one that could get the trip. But again, I don't think her odds are going to be very good because IRAD's on it. So I think she probably is going to go off favored. So that kind
Oh,
of,
you think she'll be the favorite
I
because
think
of
she
IRAD?
will. Yeah. Even though
Uh,
she hasn't raced in a year, I still think because IRAD jumped on and Dutrow, and who hasn't really won anything at Gulfstream yet. So
yeah, I was going to say with Dutrow off the layoff at Gulfstream, it doesn't scream like the
yeah,
horse is live, but
why would he
maybe,
ride it is the question. That's a weird.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because it's been off for so long, right?
I know. I couldn't
Yeah,
believe he was on that, but that'll definitely attract money. So I mean,
yeah.
that's a horse you could might maybe try to beat. Breeze Zero, Breeze, whatever that is, Breeze Zero. um, Seems like a solid Woodbine horse, and that trainer you were talking about, he's had 2 seconds, 2/3, and 5 starts. All his horses are running good. So Tyler Gaffleon's on that. He likes to save ground, so I think that horse could get a good trip too. This is a wide open race. I mean, I could be talked into a lot of horses on this. Coco Barrio had some kind of, it was a vet scratch or something, or vet work, because I got a vet work on the horses for him, so that worries me on that one. And I don't see any horse getting loose in here. Like, I don't know what you think, but they all look like there's too many fast ones for one of them to get out there by himself. So very difficult race.
Yeah, I kind of agree. The only thing I would add is I'm a little higher on Coco Abario. That would be the horse I would be interested in here, just because um, he's run his races in his life. You know, he won on debut, off works. He ran really well off the layoff last year. He's certainly a really ouchy horse, but to me, these are the kind of horses you play off the layoff, right? They run
Yeah,
well off the layoff. They're ouchy. This trainer, he's won, it's the same trainer who's won with him both times off layoffs. And the trainer Jock teamed up for a win already at the meet. They're not the kind of that are going to get bet. And like you said, I think this horse has some speed, but not go to the lead speed. And that inside post could just fall into a really nice trip. If it finds a seam late, it could be sitting in just behind the front runners, that might be going pretty quick and save ground. And like you said, get that inside out trip if he can ease out or find a seam, might be the surprise. I was a little surprised that horse was 8-1 in the morning line. I expect it to be higher. I think that might float up above that. So that was the one I caught my eye from a handicapping perspective. I'm always looking for, especially in sprinters, ouchie sprinters. Those are the kind I look to play off the layoff, because
yeah,
they're going to usually not, they're going to try to get them ready because they don't know how many races they're going to get out of the horse, right?
exactly.
And this guy's been successful at getting this horse to run well off the layoff before. So, his only bad race was the time they tried him a stakes race at Colonial on the dirt. But synth and turf races are all good. So, he's never run a bad race. He doesn't have to improve much off of his, spring 3-year-old form. Now he's a 4-year-old to win this race and could trip out. And he won't get bet. I don't think he's going to be 8-1. I think he'll be higher than that. But I don't know if you agree with me on that. But
That would be tremendous, because I mean, figure wise, she fits very well in there. I mean, I got no problem, and post wise, it's a great post, because I don't think the 1 is very good either. So I think the 1's kind of a toss. So That would be, it would definitely be, if that horse was 10-1, definite use.
So how do you attack a race like this where there's not going to be a real heavy favorite? There's not any horses you love. Do you just hope you're going to get a price on one or two that you do have a little bit more of an opinion on? And if you don't, you just pass. I mean, what do you do with this kind of race? Or maybe if say you do get your 4-1 on Greenfield Cougar, how do you
So
bet the race?
if I give 4-1 on Greenfield Cougar, I'll probably uh key her the 4 with 2, 5, 6 probably is probably what I would go 4 with 2, 5, 6. Now again, I wouldn't do that if the 4 is 2-1 and I don't have any value underneath. I'm not going to do that, because I just don't think it'll be worth the risk. So, but if your Coco Barrio goes off 10-1 or more, I mean, she's a must use in there. Bree Zero could get overlooked a little bit in this spot because there's just so many horses they can play. I think they'll play Irad and I think they'll play the 6. So. Um, it can get interesting, but it may end up being a pass.
So if let's say Greenfield Cougar gets Betty's 3-1, or she's 3-1. I keep wanting to call that horse a he, 3-1. Then what would you do? Is that a pass, or what is there some other horse that might get you interested? Or I'm just curious.
Well, I
Yeah,
probably wouldn't see her at 3-1. I'd probably wait to see if the 5 or the 2 were way higher than that, or if they were in. I kind of go by exactas more than the win odds anyway. So I'm looking at what the exactas would be, or I'm looking at doubles to see if I can get an idea what they're gonna, or pick threes payoffs to see what their odds are gonna be. Because in this day and era we're in, the odds change fast. So we got to kind of know what we're getting into before we make our play. So it's difficult, but it's probably not one of my favorite races on the card. So I probably will be looking to pass it if I don't get something, of value in there.
So just one other question in general, because I know you follow the Gulfstream races, and I know you're not afraid to bet turf sprints. You guys have had
Oh yeah.
ownership of some good turf sprinters. So the Gulfstream Park turf course, what's sort of the ideal horse you're looking for? Is the one that's going to wire the field, one that's going to sit on the rail just off? I mean, what are you looking for typically? What's your bias on these kind of races?
I think you got to be up close and inside. So, like that's why I talk about like the 2 having a good post and maybe a horse that 2 is inside that's not very good, so that if she got over to the rail, pretty quickly, that would be a good sign for the 2. The 4 is going to have to come from off the pace, so I'm hoping she saves ground, angles out, um, that kind of thing. You're always looking for loose speed. If you could find a loose speed at Gulfstream going 5 furlongs on the turf, that's what you want. But in this scenario, I don't see it happening. I just think there's too many fast horses in here.
Yeah, it makes sense. Is there any riders in particular you think are better than others riding these turf sprints at Gulfstream?
Gap Leon's very good. That's I always seem to land on one of his because he's always seems to be that guy that likes to tuck in and go forward. He goes forward most of the time too. So I don't want the guy like that's going to go back and out. You don't want like I'm not sure who that would be, like Johnny Velasquez. He likes to stalk outside. Castellano likes to save ground, but he kind of gets horses in trouble a lot. So I'm not in love with him. So I mean, the riding colony has changed so much. Because all these guys are now, they're going to Kentucky and they're going to, you got Jose Ortiz at
Oaklawn,
Oaklawn, Jose Ortiz at
Fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds, you
Yeah.
got Rosario at Oaklawn. So it's kind of changed dramatically, it's drastically.
Yeah, it makes that IRAD tax even higher.
Yeah, makes
Um,
it huge.
yeah, I think the probably one of the most underrated bad trips in racing is, that pressing a reasonable or a fast pace 3 wide in a turf sprint. That's just
Yeah,
a killer.
yeah,
You
you're
know,
done.
you
That's like
almost
a
have no
horse like,
chance.
I think that's like a horse like the 9 today. I just don't see how a horse like that can can possibly win. I mean, because she's not gonna clear. She's gonna be pressing outside, and she's not probably one of the better horses in the race. So yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to eliminate some, right? That's the goal here, is to eliminate. So you can eliminate probably the 9 and the 10, and you might even eliminate the 8 if you don't think she can clear. So I mean, that's the idea. And then you play against some, that's how you can get involved in a race like this, because you can eliminate enough of them and then throw out a horse like that's overbet with IROD, or there's always some little thing we can get value on, in a 5 furlong turf sprint.
Yeah, that's a good. I like the way you talk about it. From terms of elimination. First thing you'd love to eliminate is a favorite, right? Because that
Yeah,
takes a lot of money out of the pool. And then if you can eliminate, you know, three, 4, 5 horses you just don't think are contenders,
right.
then you've got something to work with, right?
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm doing on my website. I'm trying to get people to think that way before they make their bet. Don't just bet on instinct. Don't just bet because you want to bet it. Bet on a horse. Don't bet it by name, or you got to have reasons why you're playing these horses.
Amen. Amen, brother. Okay, so let's go on to race 11. We're going to skip over the 10th, then we're going to go to the 11th. So this is also a turf race, and you'll notice that we've covered the last 3 turf races at Gulfstream, which are going to be the 3 races in that all turf pick 3 I talked about.
Oh,
So
that's great. Yeah.
that's something that listeners can think about. That $3 minimum, 15% takeout. If you think you like 2 or 3 of the races, that's not a bad bet if you want to take on a little bit of a. It's not as crazy as trying to hit a pick 5 or a pick 6. It's more chance you're going to hit it. But I still would recommend you don't play even the pick 3 unless you like at least 2 of the 3 races. So anyway, this 11th race is a mile. This one is a turf stakes race for Florida breds, the Sunshine Filly and Mare Turf. It used to be a big day at Gulfstream in Santa Anita. They had that Sunshine Millions with Calbreds and Florida breds, and they would have all stakes cards full of races. But I don't think there's enough Calbreds to do that anymore. So they kind of just split things up.
Yeah.
So now
Unfortunately.
we've got a pretty good race here. The favorite is Great Venezuela, who's way out on the 11 post. What do you think about Great Venezuela, and what are your general impressions kind of at this 20,000-foot level on this race?
So this is a good race, I think, that I would use as a good teaching tool. Like this race has a lot going on. So you got horses that are stretching out, like the 11, who's going a mile. I'd never take horses at short prices doing something that that's not their specialty, and I'm not sure this horse wants to go a mile. And with that post, like we were talking about earlier, I don't want a horse from an 11 post that's going to get caught wide in the first turn. Now they may send her hard, but I think that could also be her, undoing too. So because there's lots of speed in here. If you look through this page, you got the 9 Rugelach, you got the 11, you got a couple of these towards the inside that like to be on the lead. The 3 likes to be on the lead, and the 2 is also stretching out from 6 furlongs to a mile. And that horse is pretty quick. So I see a fast pace. Now that doesn't always happen. As you know, you see a bunch of speed on paper. It doesn't always happen in the race. But I take my chances against a horse like the 11 in here. I'm gonna totally throw that one out. I am going to use Rugelach just because visually I couldn't believe that he sat last time at Tampa and actually ran really well, or she ran very well. I watched that race and I thought, wow, I can't believe she can actually sit and make a run, because she hasn't done that too often going a mile, but she did at Tampa. So I'm using her. The horse that I like the best in here is the 7, Ashima. Now, Ashima has a tremendous record. If you notice, she had 10 wins and 20 starts. That's very, very rare for a horse to have 10 wins and 20 starts. Three of them on the grass out of 8 starts with 2 seconds and 2/3. Very consistent, very solid runner. And I think this horse is going to get a really, really good trip. I think she's going to sit just in behind the speeds. Castellano likes to save ground. As long as he doesn't get her into any traffic problems, I think I think she's actually value at 3-1. I think she should be more like 9-5. So
What do you think she will be?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think the 11's going to be 5-2. So that kind of throws. I think the 11's going to be more like 3 or 4-1.
Yeah, so it seems like seven's going to be the favorite, I would think, in
I
here.
would think she's going to go off around 2-1 probably.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So is that fair value or?
I think it is. I just think she's just very consistent, and in this spot, she's got speed figures that pretty much tower over this bunch. She's running close to 90, and with the trip on top of that, I think she's going to get a good trip. So now in this case, now you got to find some value underneath if you're keying the 7. So, but if we're fading the 11 and we're using 9, we just got to find maybe one other good priced horse, and then we can play the race, right?
So who is that one other good priced horse?
There's the $1 million question. The $1 million question is, who is that one? I think it's going to be, and I don't like the post, but I think it's going to be Super Zonda. Unfortunately, as Johnny V from an outside post, and he doesn't like saving too much ground, but I thought that horse ran okay last time. Got into a pretty, not like a pace duel, but at least a contested pace, and held pretty good in the stretch. I just wish she drew inside. If she was in a 3 or 4 hole, then I would definitely use her. So it's tough. I was trying to figure out one of these inside horses that might get an inside trip, but I didn't think they were good enough. I don't know if you think, the 1 or the 2, or even the 3 is good enough. Maybe if the 3 sat an inside trip, maybe, but I don't. She doesn't have the fastest speed figures, so she would have to improve.
It seems like the 3 will be caught up in the pace, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's good enough. I thought the 1 not to win, but could be a clunk up, in the try super kind of horse, because it should save ground from the rail, and it will be finishing in a race that could have a pretty hot pace. So that one was one I thought you could maybe use underneath. Probably the others horse, I think, as a win contender, I would say probably the second most likely to win, although maybe you're right about Rugaloct. I'm just not convinced that horse from an outside post. That's one I think with a fast-paced race. I'm just not quite sure what trip could win for that horse. That's why I'm not quite as high on that one as you are. But I thought the 6-horse Spirited Boss, the big concern with that one, it's IRAD, so it'll probably get bet down. But, that horse second off the layoff looked pretty good in the comeback race. I didn't think it had the perfect trip or anything. And, it's turf races and synth races are all really good. Second off the layoff for a 4-year-old could certainly improve off that effort. So to me, and it's one that, can sit off and finish. So to me, that one's probably going to get a good trip. Probably, I think, the biggest threat to Ashima. I agree with you. That horse kind of clearly the most likely winner. And I'm against Great Venezuela just for all the same reasons you said. So, but for me, it would probably be, if I were going to play this race, it would probably be wanting to get Spirited Boss in there with Ashima and maybe a Lady Cha Cha and somebody else. I'm not sure who the other one is.
Yeah, that's the trouble with that race.
Yeah,
and Irad's going to take money, so he won't be the 1. He'll be 4-1, right? So.
Yeah. So assuming that's true, and that's about what I was thinking too. This probably of the races, from vertical bets, win bets, I probably wouldn't have a bet in here, but I might still try to play that turf pick 3, leaning on Ashima and Spirited Boss probably be the 2 I would use.
Yeah, that turf pick 3 is a good idea. I mean, I think because you could, I would single Ashima, so that would be my play for that turf pick 3, and try to spread in the 5 furlong turf race.
And then that first one you liked, St. Armand's Key and Irwin and Hot Blooded.
Use a couple of them in there. Use Irwin. Use St. Armand's Key. Yeah, maybe Hot Blooded, but I don't know. I probably would mainly.
You'd have to check it and see, right?
Anyway, 5 and 7, maybe 1 and 2 would be my backups in the first leg.
So for a pick three like that, what's your kind of typical ticket structure? Are you looking for at least a single? Are you looking for at least one price horse? I mean, what typically gets you interested in that pick three and how you structure that? I'm curious.
I think in the $3 one, you don't have to worry about I don't like singling favorites, but in a $3 one, it's a lot different. Like, it keeps these CAW guys, out of those kind of bets, because they don't like high denomination. They like 50 cents. They like a dollar. They like the small denominations, and I think it keeps enough people out. So I don't mind singling a horse like that horse in the last. I think you always need a single to play these because you don't want to go like 3x4x5. You don't want to play a ticket like that. It's too much. It costs you too much, and it's too much spread. So you got to have. I like to play a lot of times 3 different tickets in the pick three where I single one in each leg. Like I single one in the sixth. I single one in the, what is that other race? Is it the eighth race or is it
The sixth, ninth, and 11th?
sixth, ninth? So I've single one in the sixth, one of them in the ninth, and one of them in the 11th. Obviously, you know who the one in the 11th would be. So that would be the way I would do it. And then play others on those single tickets. So I'd go like 3x3x1, 3x1x3, 1x3x3, something like that.
Yeah, I kind of like the same thing. If I usually won't play it unless there's two legs that I like,
Yeah.
and where there's a horse I like, or maybe even two that are better prices that I like. And I'll do what you did. I'll play them both to win, and then I'll play one with one of them winning and one with the other one. So 3 tickets.
Yeah.
And if they both win, I can kind of crush it. But if one of them wins, I still could, make a decent score. That's sort of my default ticket structure unless something causes me to do something differently. But I usually want to have two legs where I have an opinion, a horse that I would put as one of my singles. And, if I can cook them both up in the pick three, then all of a sudden, you really have a chance to make a score. That's kind of
Yeah.
my approach.
I love it. I'm not an all guy, so I don't believe in playing them all. So if I'm playing them all, I shouldn't be playing.
Yeah, especially in the pick three,
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can maybe hide an all in a small field in a pick five or something, but
yeah.
pick
Maybe
three, you can't get away with that kind of ticket structure in long
not
term, right?
not if you're gonna not if you're gonna play all the time. I mean, and I don't like that even for telling people to do it. That are new to the game. I just don't think it's a good. Not a good value play. Just don't play that race if you can't come up with an opinion.
All right. Well, I'm going to go into the question segment. Before I do, is there any other race? Doesn't have to be at Gulfstream, but is there any other like race or horse that you want to tell the listeners about that might be someone worth incorporating to their tickets on Saturday?
Um, I had a horse that was on a list. I just didn't really look at the race yet. Let's see, who is this horse? I had a really big long shot on a bet back list. And he might be in Too Tough, but the eighth race at Gulfstream, the two horse, I must have had a bad trip on that horse. It's 20-1 on the morning line. Maybe it'd be a horse that people could fool around and exactas and tries with, because I haven't really looked at the rest of the field, and it doesn't really look like a stellar race on paper as I'm looking at it right now. So maybe that horse can get in it.
Yeah, that's the eighth race, the number 2 horse, Lenny G. That's a maiden special weight, a route race, 2 turns.
Yes.
It's making its second start. So you kind of like what you saw in that first start?
I must have liked something about it, or maybe it's a live race that he's coming out of, because I do see there's 2 winners that have come out of that race. So maybe a combination of something I saw, and the race is pretty live. It was at Churchill. It was $100,000 maiden race, so probably not really a much of a raising class. So it's probably the same thing.
Yeah, maybe you could play a little double into the ninth race.
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay, so let's get to anything else before I get to the questions that came from the listeners.
No, that's good.
All right. So, first of all, this came from Christopher Maiello, C Mellow Yellow on Twitter/X. You actually answered this on Twitter, but I'll ask you because some of the listeners may not follow you or follow me on Twitter. Is Duke your real name or is it a
No,
nickname?
I did answer that a little bit, but I didn't answer it in detail. I kind of just said it's not my real name. Real name is Kevin. I've been Duke as far as I can remember. I was like 2 years old, I think, when I got the nickname. It's kind of a long story about a song my grandfather used to sing to me, and it had Duke. He called me Doots, and I kind of got made fun of like when I was little when people would call me Doots. So it went from Doots to Duke in a weird way, and it stuck. So
I learned something. I didn't know your name was Kevin. So I'll have to. That's not a bad name.
no,
It's not like Sue or something. So nothing
no,
wrong with Kevin. I like that
no,
name. All
nothing wrong
right.
with the name. Nope.
Okay. Well, good. All right. So here's one for both of us from Joey Vegas on Twitter/X. If you only had $20 and you can only bet it on one race at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, it could only be a win bet. So a lot of restrictions. $20 win bet. Who's it going to go on? We only talked about three races, so who would be the one you'd put your $20 on?
I think just because of the value, I'd put it on Irwin race.
Yeah, yeah.
Race 6 to 5.
Number 5, race 6. I'm kind of the same, either that one or the 2, Coco Barrio. I kind of like that one as well on the ninth, but kind of splitting hairs between those two. But those are the two I'll probably be singling on my pick 3, all turf pick 3 ticket. Okay, that's
Yep.
good. Quickly moving through. Here's one from Saratoga Dan. He's at Skipaway 42. Got a Skipaway fan out there. What do you look for most when you're watching replays?
Um, that's in the future of my site that I'm going to do. I'm going to actually try to make some videos of tapes of horses that get in trouble, those kind of things. Or the pace scenario is the key when you're watching replays. You have to know, you have to really pay attention to how fast they're going up front. That's like the number one, I think, thing that people need to determine. Like, was that race? Did the pace hold up? Did it hold up because it was slow? Did it hold up even though it was fast? Did it quit because it was, did they all quit because it was a fast pace? Those kind of things are the things you want to be paying attention to, because horses that close into fast paces, they benefit, right? The horses are going very, very slow at the end of the race, and it may look like they're flying when they're not, those kind of things. Or if a horse gets into a speed duel, and then, that's a good thing to note for the next time, because that horse may end up loose on the lead one day. And when horses get in duels, they tend to quit. So it's really a hard thing to figure, but you got to really understand pace. But and on turf, like we talked about earlier, wide trips in the first turn, going 2 turns, are terrible. You need to save ground on grass, and I think a lot of horses to win, they need to be up close and inside. So when you're watching turf races, I think you're looking for horses that lost ground or got in trouble, those kind of things.
So always put it in the context of pace. It sounds like when you're watching the replay, they focus on
Yeah.
that.
That's the first thing that I tried to look at.
And then on the turf, ground loss is really big, especially on that first turn.
Yeah, people don't put enough emphasis on the first turn in those turf races. Like, I know we covered it pretty well there, about the 3 races we went over. But I think that's very, very important to save ground in that first turn.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're looking for as you're watching replays. When you're trying to project ahead of time on a race, to me, the worst combination is tactical speed that's not going to clear on an outside post. Those are the ones that are almost always hung wide. If they're slow drop backs, they can drop back and over. And if they're really quick, they can use a little bit of energy and get over. And it's a little bit depends on the rider, but to me, I totally agree with you on that. First turn is really important in that turf race. And like we talked about the turf sprints, there's only one turn. The thing about that the turn in a turf sprint, they're flying, right?
Yeah, they're zooming, right?
And the
Yeah.
faster you're going, the worse it is to be hung wide. So
Exactly. That's why I say you got to know the pace, because if they're going quick and you're outside in a turf race, you're much bigger disadvantage than if they're going slow. So if they're going slow, like in the first turn, they're going like 25, it's not that big a deal. But when they're going 23 and change into the first turn, or 21 and change going into a sprint race, and you're hung out there, you're in deep trouble.
yeah, because you're burning so much energy to keep up,
Yes.
when they're going fast. If they're going slow, you just gotta go a little. It's like if you're loping along walking, you can walk a little bit faster without burning a lot of energy. But if you're running full speed, and you try to speed up, that
Yeah.
really burns fuel.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. You don't mind if we keep going on this?
Sure. Go
I
ahead.
think this is good. I think listeners will like it. You're giving some great answers. This one comes from UCLA Tunnels, obviously UCLA fan, Ventura Paul. Uh, if you had to pick just one handicapping tool, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would go with I think it's so hard because one's so hard but I think trainer changes are the one thing that I think I look at probably the most nowadays.
And
Positive.
are you looking at the statistics for those, or just your own
Well,
knowledge of the trainers? What are you looking for?
the problem is, yeah, again, it's not simple, right? Certain trainers are better with certain angles. Certain trainers are better with on turf versus dirt, and I just think you notice a lot of times nowadays when a horse leaves a barn, he goes south pretty quick. Not sure what the reasoning is. Maybe it's the feed program, maybe it's the care. I don't know, but a lot of times you'll see a horse will be in great form and he'll switch barns and it'll just totally fizzle. And I think that's probably become my number one my angle, even though there's even though there's probably I don't know, there's tons of them. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, yeah. In fact, well, a great example, I think, of what you just said about a horse changing barns and going south was in that ninth race. The one horse Hot Cargo went away from Safi, and
There you go. See,
just the horse hasn't, lifted its foot in a couple races since then.
yeah, and those are things you don't want to get caught up. You don't want to get caught up betting a horse that goes from Safi to a trainer that you think you want to avoid those, right? But so it's hard. I like certain trainers. There some of them are very good first time they get a horse. Sometimes they give them 5 weeks and they do everything they can to get them, like you were saying earlier. They might be a little ouchy, so they do everything they can to get that one win back. So they want that one win right away. They want their money back, so they do everything for the first one. So it can go both ways.
All right, great. Thank you for that answer. Got a few more. This one's from John G. John G. 81862580. Sounds like a Steely Dan song or something.
Yeah.
Chorus to that. Um, are there any types of races in particular that you find are more apt to provide value?
Hmm. Well, maiden races are you can always find value, but they're more difficult to handicap. So that's a catch 22 there because you don't have a lot to go off of. Um, I tend to do better in cheaper races, believe it or not. I like these tracks that run some of these $5,000 claimers when there's like 12 horses in it, like at Mahoning or something. You can find tons of value in those sprint races where horses are kind of going in and out of form. But that's a difficult question. I mean, it's just it's not necessarily the particular race. I think it's just the way the race. How many horses are in it? Number one, right?
So
If
field
12
size, you
field
definitely think
size,
bigger field size, right, is going to be
right?
better.
Yeah. So if you have a 12 horse field, you can find something, right? I mean, it's obvious. There's got to be something in there. But I tend to do very good on like maiden claiming races that are big fields for some unknown reason. I don't know why. Um, I just think I can pick. I can eliminate more, I think, and I can pick something that's a price that I think's had maybe a bad trip first time out, or maybe the trainer's better second time out, or there's so many things that we could go through on that. But look for a big field, and that's about all you can do.
And that probably is a really good one, though. We already said how the small fields are not good. Even the bigger fields are even better. And it doesn't surprise me that since you said your favorite tool is the trainer, analyzing trainers, that the cheap claimers would be one where the trainer probably is the most dominant factor, right? A
Yep.
lot of those.
Yep.
It's funny, and it shows how this game is so great and how there's so many different ways to approach it. Because last week I had Craig Milkowski on, and his least favorite race. It's like cheap claimers, and that's your
Yeah.
favorite race, right? And
Isn't that crazy? I mean,
you both
that's
have success, right? But you can. That's the key, though, is finding out what it is you like and what you're good at, right? And
exactly.
focusing on that. There's no right or wrong.
No.
It's very individual, and that's just a great example of that.
Yeah, keep track of what I tell people, keep track of what races you hit. Go over them even after you hit them, and try to figure out, what went right, what went wrong. That's the whole idea here. Where we all need to learn. I'm learning every day, and I've been doing this for as far as I can remember. So
Absolutely. All right, couple more. I'm sorry I'm dragging on a little bit, but these are fun. This one's for you from Ed Mintz at Coco Bud Capper. Have no idea what that is, but that's his handle. He wants to know, have you dipped your toe into the Hong Kong racing?
oh yeah, definitely.
So what are your impressions? Is that something you're serious about? Are you moving in that direction?
I may. I have dipped into it a little bit. The time is terrible for me. That's the biggest problem. Like when they
On the
run
West Coast, it's a real killer. Yeah.
they run at Happy Valley, and it's like I think they start at like 3 a.m. my time. It's just absolutely horrible. And then when they run at Shot 10, it's more like 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. And I'm not usually ready to start after doing a whole Saturday card.
Not a card. You say you're trying to do 4 or 5, right?
Yeah,
So
think about
on
that day
Saturday.
after you're doing four or five cards on a Saturday. Then you
Well,
want to do
Paul says he does it, and I don't know how he does. He must not sleep, right?
yeah. Well, he
Paul, your
doesn't.
brother. So
Paul doesn't sleep very much. He sleeps like 4 hours. So I like to get 7.
yeah, so that hasn't been as much of a barrier for Paul, I guess, as you, the timing.
Yeah, he's got better because
And it's East Coast too, which is
East
a little
Coast,
better, right?
you can get up at 6 or 7 and do the Wednesday card, and then he has more trouble with the other one. The other one's like 1 a.m. I think it starts. Saturday nights. I think it's Sundays over there. It's Saturday nights here. But I have dipped into it a little bit. I don't love Shot 10 that much because you don't get as many trips at Shot 10 as at Happy Valley. Happy Valley's got like tighter turn races. I like their 6 and 7, what we would call 6 furlongs or 7 furlong turf sprints over there. I kind of like those at Happy Valley where they start into a right hand turn pretty quickly. And the horses that get hung wide are they're almost eliminated. So you can get a lot of trips on that, but the CAWs they're just as bad there though.
But the quality of the product is pretty good compared, US where it keeps getting worse. That's pretty good product.
Yes, it's very good. I mean, I do like their all weather track. It's more like a dirt track, so they only run a couple of those at Shot 10 a night, but those are interesting.
Yeah, they are really, aren't they Tapeta though, or something like that?
I think it's some form of synthetic, but it seems to play more like a dirt.
Okay, so more like a pro ride Hollywood Park day.
Yeah,
Kinda?
I think.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know what it's made out of, but I just think it's pretty true. The horses seem to handle it.
All right, we're almost through them. This one a little tougher. This comes from Ekmel 182. How do you learn to handicap, and what are the best tools for the job?
Ooh,
So,
boy.
what would you tell someone on how to learn how to handicap?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, easy question.
Yeah, yeah. I would need all night,
I'll jump in on this one, but I'm just curious what you
Yeah,
would say. What would be your,
how
you
do you
know,
learn?
yeah,
That's right from the beginning.
math as a beginner?
It's I'll tell you one thing I would do right is understanding understanding just the horse in general. See, I worked on the racetrack, when I was 16, 17. I understood what horses were like. I was around them. So just understanding the animal is number one, the number one factor, and all the things that go into that. And then I would probably watch replays of races without wagering for a long time. I think I would just watch races over and over and over again, and learn the how the races are run. Because they're all run differently at all these different racetracks. So pick one track, get used to it before you start wagering on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of biased on this one. Well, I would just say consume as much content as you can. I mean, I'm a reader, so I'd say read books.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, I'd say when I get my book out, read my book because I
There
think
you
it'll be a
go.
great resource.
There's your
But
there's the answer. Read your book.
but but in the meantime, there's been a lot of good books. Now some of them are a little dated and stale, but there's still a lot of evergreen class, relevant stuff like Beyer and Chris and Davidowitz and Meadow and Kramer. Though you learn something if you read those books, and some of it's like I said, outdated, but read that. And I would say, podcasts aren't a bad resource either. And again, I'm gonna tout my podcast Bet with the Best. That was the reason I created that, was to help people become better horse players. So, listen to that podcast, and some of the others are good too. Even this podcast, I'm trying to bring a little bit of a learning element into it every week, and you can kind of tell that from our discussion we're having here. So, and there's others, some of these guys are pretty sharp. Some of the analysts out there, sort of like a David Aragona, you're going to pick some things up when you listen to them. So to me, just consume as much as you can. And then I'd say, but the best way to learn is to do. You can't learn how to play tennis unless you play. You can't
Right.
learn how to ride a bike unless you get on a bike. You can't learn how to bet on horses unless you start betting on horses. So, but you don't want to spend a fortune in tuition, kind of getting to your point. So I would say analyze races, do all the stuff you said and read it, but then start, taking a race just like we are, look at it, analyze it, develop your opinion and bet it. You don't have to pass races, but when you find an opinion that you feel strongly about, bet it, but bet it like $2 to win. Keep it real simple and cheap, but at least get used to actually putting real money on the horse and getting that reinforcement when it comes in, and do that and practice that, and develop a process. You talked about a process. I talked about in my book. Come up with some method. Don't just do it randomly each time you look at a race. Come up with a way of, using whatever tool you decide to use, whether it's watching replays or, using a certain, past performances or whatever, and just practice. That's the only way you can get good at anything, is you got
Yeah,
to
I
do it.
mean, no doubt about it. And use the tools that are available to you. Like you can come to, my site. You can come to dukespicks.com
That's right. I should have thrown
and
that one out there. Yeah. Now
yeah,
you've created another tool, a
yeah.
resource to learn about the game. You're not just trying to give them out winners. You're trying to teach them how to pick them themselves, and picking it yourself and betting on it and cashing on it. That horse player high is much better than betting on somebody else's pick,
Oh,
right?
100%. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not doing it
That's
otherwise.
what gets you into the game. That's what got us both into it. Is
Yeah.
that
You want to
so,
learn, and you want to, like you said, you want to do it yourself. So, but you gotta, a beginner's tough. So you gotta learn some things before you start just throwing your money,
right?
races. So
But most people can afford $2 to win on their
yeah,
best plays of the day. So I'm not saying throw away money, and keep it simple. I always say start with the win bets, because if you
yep.
can't pick winners and find value, then you're not going to do any. You're going to do worse on any other bet. So start with the win bet. That's where you want to start.
Definitely start with win bets for sure.
So one last question. This actually came last week, but I want to ask you because I think it's a good question, because It affects people like yourself. This new tax law where you can't deduct all of your winnings, only 95%. Is that impacting you at all, or at some point may it impact the way you
Oh
play?
yeah,
And
yeah. That's a bad law that the big beautiful bill is
not so beautiful for
not
horse
beautiful
players,
for
or
us.
yeah.
No, I'm not liking that at all. So I'm hoping that thing gets reversed at some point this year. So that'll be the key. If it doesn't, that's going to create. I got to try to. There's got to be a way around some of that. I don't know. But we'll
But
try
be
to figure
careful.
that out.
We're recording this. But yeah, so I mean, if it rolls around to September or October and it's looking like it might not get changed, is that gonna affect your betting behavior?
Yeah, for
I,
sure.
yeah, I'm kind of like you, hoping thinking it will probably get changed. But if it gets into middle of the year and it's not looking promising, I might have to reassess. Right.
Yeah, I might have to go back into the contest world, maybe. I don't know. I mean, because I don't know what you can do even in that to it. Again, that's a question for an accountant, you know.
Yes, yes. We're not giving out any legal advice or tax advice. We're just saying how we might react to that. But it's certainly a concerning development, right? For
Oh,
people especially people who are professional players or put a lot of money through the windows, that could pose a problem
oh
for
yes,
sure.
for sure. It's not a good thing.
Okay, that runs the gamut. Anything else you want to add before we sign off? This has
No,
been a
we
good
covered
discussion.
a lot of
Yeah.
stuff here tonight.
Give them one more time. Duke's Picks is dukespicks.com. Is that what it was?
Yep, it's DUKESPICKS, dukespicks.com. Yep. And check it out. I hope I can get some more people, and I think everybody's enjoying it, and they're learning. You know, I've had a lot of guys tell me that they've learned a lot already, and we've only been going here for 2 months, so it's going well.
Yeah, and for me, that's part of the fun is that you never can learn this whole game because it's constantly changing. And part of that is, to me, appeals. So you got to keep learning, right? It
Yes.
doesn't ever get stale. You can't just sit on something because anytime you find an edge, it's gonna disappear
Oh yeah.
eventually.
Somebody else ruins your edge at some point,
Yes. All
but
right. Well, I really want to thank you, Duke. This has been great. Really appreciate you joining us. I appreciate all the listeners out there, especially if you held on for an hour and 20 minutes, whatever this is going to run. Hopefully you got something out of it. Even if we kind of stink it up on our opinions, which we may or may not happen. Hopefully there's some other nuggets you could have gotten out of our discussion. Either way, so that'll conclude show number 344 of the Sport of Kings podcast. Good luck this weekend, and please enjoy the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout. Cheers.
thanks, Chris.